Have you ever felt that no matter how hard you try, things just don't turn out the way you planned? Maybe it seems like the answers to your prayers are delayed or your life feels stuck. But believe me, God's plan is about to completely transform your life. What you don't see right now is that God has a perfect plan, and He is already working on every detail, even if everything seems stagnant. When you understand that God is in control, you begin to see that every challenge is an opportunity for something greater that He is preparing for you. The truth is that living God's plan requires you to fully trust His timing. And I know that can be difficult. We want everything now, but God always operates at the right time. Today, you will discover how this spiritual transformation is already happening in your life, even if you don't realize it. God's miracles are about to happen, and the life purpose He has for you will be revealed in a way that will change everything. So stay with me until the end of this video because you will understand how God's promises are closer than you imagine. If this message is already touching your heart, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this reflection with someone who also needs to hear this word today. And if you need prayer, don't hesitate to leave your request in the comments. We will be praying for you. Trust in God during difficult times. When you find yourself facing challenges, it's natural to feel discouraged or get lost in thoughts of doubt. But it's precisely in these moments that trust in God needs to be your greatest strength. Remember that God has a perfect plan for your life, even when it seems hard to see it. Trusting in God is an act of faith, and when you lean on that trust, you begin to realize that every obstacle can be an opportunity for spiritual growth and renewal. In difficult times, the first step is to recognize that God is in control, and nothing escapes His will. It is common to want quick answers, especially when suffering seems unbearable. But trusting in God's timing means understanding that He knows what is best for you. Imagine a road that seems long and full of curves. You may want to reach the destination quickly, but it is in those curves that you learn to navigate with more wisdom. Trusting in the divine plan works the same way. Biblical examples, such as Job, show how God allowed great trials, but in the end, He rewarded Job's faith and perseverance. God does not promise a life without difficulties, but He promises to be by your side, giving you strength to overcome each battle. When you put your trust in God, you begin to realize that difficulties are temporary, but God's miracles are eternal. Your faith becomes the anchor that keeps you firm. You can apply this trust in God in small moments of daily life. Perhaps you're facing a situation at work that seems like a dead end, or a strained family relationship. Instead of despairing, take a pause and place your worries in God's hands. Trust that He will lead you in the right direction. If you need inspiration, take time to read about biblical characters who faced challenges and came out stronger. These examples will nourish your faith and renew your hope in God. Understand that God's timing is perfect. Even if you don't see the answers immediately, know that He is working behind the scenes, aligning every detail for your good. Trust in this process, because in the end, you will see that everything was part of a bigger plan, beyond what you could imagine. And as you strengthen your trust in God, you prepare yourself for the next step in this spiritual journey. God operates in a different time. One of the greatest lessons we can learn by walking with God is that He operates in a time different from ours. Many times, we want immediate solutions to our problems and quick answers to our prayers. But God's timing does not follow the rhythm of our anxiety. He works at His own pace, and this requires us to develop patience and trust. When we understand that God's plan is perfect, we can rest, knowing that He is preparing the best for us, even when we can't see it. The story of Joshua and the Israelites around the walls of Jericho is an excellent example of how God acts in His time. They marched for 7 days with faith, not knowing exactly when or how victory would happen. To human eyes, it may have seemed like a long and uncertain wait, but Joshua trusted in divine guidance. At the end of the march, the walls fell, revealing that God's timing is always perfect. This shows that even when we are marching without understanding why God is working behind the scenes to bring down the walls in our lives. Applying this to our daily lives can be a great challenge, but it's a practice that transforms our perspective. Think about a moment in your life when something you greatly desired didn't happen immediately. Maybe a job you wanted, an opportunity that seemed perfect. When you look back, you realize that what didn't come in your timing wasn't part of God's purpose at that moment. Faith in God's timing teaches us to trust that He knows what we truly need. While we wait, it's important to remember that this waiting is not a sign of God's neglect, but rather an opportunity for spiritual growth. Every moment of waiting is like training for our faith. Waiting teaches us to develop resilience and brings us closer to God as we learn to depend entirely on Him. When we trust in God's timing, our faith is strengthened, and we become more prepared to receive the blessings He has already prepared for us. Understanding that God operates in a different time brings peace to the heart. When we accept this truth, we let go of haste and frustration and embrace the process. By doing so, we become more sensitive to divine direction and more open to the transformations God wants to make in our lives. And speaking of biblical examples of patience and faith, we can see how waiting was essential for the spiritual transformation of many. Biblical examples of patience and faith. The Bible is full of examples of people who, in the face of uncertainty and difficulties, chose to wait on God. The prophet Habakkuk is one of the great examples of patience and faith. He cried out to the Lord, seeking answers to the suffering and injustice he witnessed. In his anguish, Habakkuk received a vision that God would act at the right time and that he should trust and wait. This vision was a reminder that God's promises always come to pass, but in the perfect time He appoints. Habakkuk learned that waiting on God does not mean inaction, but rather a confident surrender to the divine plan. While he awaited the fulfillment of God's promises, his heart was transformed, and he could declare that even if there was no fruit on the vine or cattle in the field, he would still rejoice in the Lord. This teaches us that true faith does not depend on the circumstances around us, but on the certainty that God is in control, even when outward signs seem contrary. Another powerful example is Abraham, who waited for years for the promise of a son. God had promised that he would be the father of a great nation, but Abraham and Sarah faced many years of waiting before that promise was fulfilled. During that time, Abraham maintained his trust in God, even when everything seemed impossible. The wait was not easy, but it strengthened his faith. Abraham believed in God's promise and was rewarded at the right time. His patience teaches us that God's plan is always greater than our immediate understanding. Looking at these examples, we can apply their lessons to our own lives. If you are waiting for an answer from God, remember that He is never late. The wait is an opportunity for you to grow spiritually and prepare to receive what God has for you. During this period, continue seeking divine direction through prayer and reading the Word, strengthening your faith. Just like Habakkuk and Abraham, your patience will be rewarded in God's time. These biblical examples show us that God works in our lives in ways we may not immediately understand. But when we look at the history of faith, we see that patience and trust in God yield great fruit. And speaking of patience, let's now explore how waiting on God is a preparation for something greater. The importance of patience. Patience is one of the most challenging virtues to cultivate, especially in a world that values speed and immediate results. But in the context of God's plan, patience plays a fundamental role. It teaches us that waiting is not a form of delay but a preparation for something much greater. When you develop patience, you begin to understand that each moment of waiting is shaping your character and strengthening your faith. Patience is the foundation for fully trusting God's perfect plan. It's important to realize that patience does not mean passivity. While you wait, there are many ways to prepare spiritually and emotionally. Think of waiting as a learning and growth phase. Just as a farmer needs to wait for the right time to harvest the fruits, you also need time to mature before receiving God's promises. Use this time to deepen your understanding of the Word, pray more frequently, and seek divine direction for your life. A practical example of this is when we face moments of uncertainty in our professional or personal lives. Perhaps you're waiting for a promotion, a career change, or even an answer to a prayer about a relationship. In those moments, instead of rushing to try to resolve things on your own, you can dedicate this time to grow in your trust in God. He is preparing you for the next step, and when that moment comes, you will be stronger and more prepared to receive what He has in store. Patience is also a way to demonstrate your trust in God's plan. When you wait with faith, you show that you believe God is in control of everything. Impatience, on the other hand, reveals a lack of trust and can lead to rash decisions that divert you from God's path. That's why when you feel tempted to rush things, it's essential to remember that God's timing is perfect. He is never late and knows exactly when to act in your life. And as you develop this patience, don't forget that there is a greater purpose in everything. God does not make you wait for no reason. He is shaping something great for your future. What seems like a delay may actually be the necessary preparation for you to receive God's blessings. And speaking of comparison, let's reflect on why we shouldn't measure ourselves against others, especially when following God's plan. Do not compare yourself to others. Comparing yourself to others can be one of the greatest obstacles to your spiritual and personal growth. When you look at someone else's journey and start questioning what is missing in your own life, you move away from trust in God's plan. Each person has a unique divine purpose, and what God is doing in someone else's life does not diminish what He is doing in yours. In fact, comparison is a trap that can make you lose focus on God's path for your life. God has a perfect plan for each of us, and He guides us differently. Imagine you're in a race, but instead of looking at your own track, you start worrying about how fast others are running. This distraction not only makes you lose direction but also prevents you from doing your best. The secret is to keep your eyes on God and trust that He is guiding you at the right speed and pace. Your journey is unique and has a specific life purpose. When you start comparing yourself to others, it can generate frustration and insecurity. You may feel that you're not progressing fast enough or that you're not achieving the same results as others. But this comparison is misleading because God's plan for you is completely different. What you need is to trust in God's timing, knowing that He is shaping your life according to His divine purpose. Instead of comparing yourself, celebrate what God is doing in the lives of others while waiting for God's promises in your own life. Comparison can also lead to doubt and despair, which takes you away from God's will. Instead of getting trapped in the comparison pitfall, focus on seeking divine direction for your life. God knows exactly what you need and when you need it. He knows your heart and is working out every detail so that you can fully live the purpose He designed for you. By abandoning comparison, you allow God to work freely in your life. Remember that comparison is unnecessary because God's path for you is individual and perfect. What He has for you is unique and cannot be measured by other standards. Every stage of your life, every challenge, and every victory is preparing you for something greater. Now that you understand this, let's talk about how to avoid despair and doubt that may arise when we feel frustrated with God's timing. Avoid despair and doubt. When we face difficult times, despair and doubt can easily creep into our hearts. It's in these moments that our faith in God is tested most deeply. Despair often arises when we feel we're losing control or things aren't going as planned. But it is precisely in these moments that we need to remember that God is in control of everything. He knows your challenges, your pain, and He is working behind the scenes, even when it seems like nothing is happening. Doubt is what pulls us away from God's path, while trust in Him brings us closer to His promises. Despair can lead us to make hasty decisions that pull us away from God's purpose. That's why it's essential to avoid these traps by staying focused on God's goodness. When you're tempted to doubt, remember God's miracles in the past, both in your life and in the lives of others. The Bible is full of examples of people who, in desperate situations, trusted in God and saw transformation happen. This trust is what keeps us firm, even when the circumstances around us seem contrary. If you're going through a moment of uncertainty, take a pause and reflect on God's promises. They are a constant reminder that God's plan is perfect, even when you can't see the outcome. Maybe you're facing a financial crisis, a health problem, or even emotional challenges. Instead of being overwhelmed by despair, place those concerns in God's hands. He knows exactly what you need, and at the right time, He will act according to His will. Doubt is a force that tries to erode our faith, but it only has power over us if we allow it. You can avoid doubt by reinforcing your trust in God daily. This can be done through prayer, reading the Bible, and hearing the testimony of others who also went through difficult times and found strength in God. By feeding your faith with God's Word, you block doubt's entry and allow the Holy Spirit to bring peace to your heart. Staying focused on God's plan, even when everything around you seems to be falling apart, is the key to avoiding despair. When you decide to trust God, even without understanding the details of what is happening, you demonstrate unshakable faith. And it's this faith that moves mountains and opens doors that seemed impossible to open. And while you maintain this trust, let's reflect on the growth that occurs during the waiting period. Growth during the waiting. Waiting is often seen as a time of inactivity, but in God's plan, waiting is a valuable opportunity for spiritual growth. When you wait on God, something powerful happens within you. Your faith is refined, your patience is tested, and your relationship with God deepens. It is in this moment that God is working in your heart, shaping it so that you are ready to receive the blessings He has already planned. The growth during the wait is not immediately visible, but when we look back, we can see how God transformed us in the process. While you wait, it is important to understand that God's purpose is much greater than just answering your prayers. He is preparing you for something greater than you can imagine. Imagine a plant that grows silently underground before breaking through the surface. Similarly, while you wait, your spiritual roots are deepening, allowing you to be stronger when God's answers finally come. This waiting period may seem long, but it is necessary for you to grow solidly and firmly. A practical example of this growth can be seen in moments of challenge at work or in relationships. During these uncertain periods, instead of focusing on the anxiety of waiting, you can use the time to improve your skills, strengthen your relationships, and draw closer to God in prayer. Waiting is not wasted time, it is an opportunity to build your faith and resilience. God is developing in you the capacity to handle the blessings that will come so that you can manage them wisely. This growth process is essential for you to be prepared for the next steps God has for your life. As you deepen your trust in God and allow Him to guide every area of your life, you become more capable of fulfilling the divine purpose He has designed. Spiritual growth during waiting also teaches you to depend more on God and less on your own strength. And this dependence is what gives you the strength necessary to face future challenges. The beauty of growth during waiting is that when God's promises finally come to pass, you are stronger and more prepared to enjoy them. You not only receive God's blessings, but you are also more connected with Him, wiser, and more confident in His plan. And speaking of God's timing, let's now explore why it is always perfect, even when we don't immediately understand it. God's timing is perfect. Understanding that God's timing is perfect is one of the greatest challenges of the life of faith. Often, we want things to happen in our time, the way we plan, but God operates at a different pace. He knows exactly the right moment for everything, and even when we don't understand the reason for the delay, we can be sure that He is always in control. God's timing is not only perfect, but it is also a reflection of His love and wisdom. He knows what is best for you, and even though waiting may be hard, in the end, everything falls into place according to the divine plan. The Bible gives us many examples of how God acts in His own time. One of the clearest is the story of Joseph, who went through years of trials before seeing God's plans come to fruition in his life. Joseph was sold into slavery, unjustly imprisoned, and faced many difficulties, but at the right time, God elevated him to a position of authority in Egypt, allowing him to save his family and his people from famine. God's timing was perfect, and every stage of Joseph's journey had a purpose. This teaches us that although the waiting period may be long, it is filled with lessons and preparation for something much greater. In your day-to-day life, trusting that God's timing is perfect can completely change the way you face challenges. Perhaps you are waiting for an answer to a prayer, such as a job opportunity, healing, or a change in your personal life. You may be wondering why God hasn't acted yet. But instead of becoming frustrated, remember that God's timing is aligned with His perfect plan. He is taking care of every detail, and when the right moment comes, the doors will open. This waiting, as challenging as it may be, is an opportunity for growth. God is preparing you for something greater, something that you may not be able to see yet. While you wait, you can trust that He is working behind the scenes, adjusting all the pieces of the puzzle of your life. God's timing is so precise that when the promises finally come to pass, you will realize that everything made sense. What seemed like a delay was actually protection and preparation. Trusting in God's timing is living with peace and hope, knowing that every step is being guided by a loving and wise hand. And as we learn to trust in this perfect timing, we can also reflect on God's promises that never fail and are always fulfilled at the right time. Now that you understand how God's plan is working in your life, the question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Your trust in God can completely transform your reality. Are you willing to surrender your worries and believe that God is in control? Don't let fear or doubt paralyze you. God has already prepared a future full of purpose and blessings for you. So, what is stopping you from fully living the perfect plan He has designed? If this content has helped you in any way, leave your comment below, giving thanks or sharing your prayer request. I will be praying for each one of you because I know that God's promises will be fulfilled in your life. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to keep learning and growing on this journey of faith.